In the news tonight, the lower house passes the budget bill as the government pledges belt-tightening measures to cut the deficit. The Prime Minister says 2017 is a year of austerity and the kingdom's debt should be kept in safe levels. And up to 30 people are buried under the debris in an avalanche that swallowed up a hotel in central Italy. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. A royal decree was issued appointing Hussein al-Majali as member of the Senate effective today. Another decree accepted the resignation from the Senate of Ayman Safadi, who was appointed Minister of Foreign and Expatriates Affairs. The lower house has passed the draft 2017 state budget law and the budgets of independent government units. The bill was endorsed by a majority vote in a plenum, the fifth day in a debate that began on Sunday. It projects 8.11 billion dinars in revenues and 8.9 billion in expenditures, with a deficit of 827 million dinars. Lawmakers addressing the session, chaired by Speaker Atif Tarawne and attended by Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki, proposed strict spending controls to bring the deficit down and a broader mandate by the Audit Bureau in cooperation with the Integrity and Anti-Corruption Commission. Most of the MPs were unanimous that the government should not raise prices and taxes or lift subsidies on basic commodities. One lawmaker said the budget bill lacked feasible solutions to address poverty and unemployment. In his reply to demands raised by the lower house members, Finance Minister Omar Malha said the government will look into a monthly 1 dinar charge on mobile phones, amend the civil retirement law and unify foreign labor fees, among other measures. He said the economy had posted a 2% growth rate in GDP in the first 3 quarters of 2016, down from 2.3% in the previous year. Inflation had also dropped by 0.8% last year, he added, and foreign trade showed that national exports posted a 9.6% drop in the first 11 months of last year, while imports also declined by 7.1% as oil imports dropped by 39.1%. The finance minister also pointed to a drop in the 2016 budget deficit and foreign debt, which he owed to improved spending controls and better collection and control of public funds. Malha's pledged to continue this trend in the next year to curb borrowing and keep the public debt at lower levels. Referring to other measures, Malha said that despite the impact of the turmoil in the region, the government will press with further austerity measures to achieve fiscal and monetary stability and create the proper climate for investment. He said the government will seek to stimulate the various sectors and find non-conventional markets for national exports. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki said the kingdom's debt had risen to unprecedented levels in the past years in breach of the public debt law. He said 2017 will be a year of austerity. Mulki told members of the Democratic Party that it is absolutely unacceptable that this situation persists. It is inevitable to return the debt to safe levels and get rid of the deficit. The Prime Minister reaffirmed that any government measures to address the debt and budget deficit will not affect basic commodities or the low and middle income groups. Mulki said there will be no price or tax increase on over 70% of basic foodstuff, including bread, as well as water and cooking gas cylinders. He said government spending will be slashed as the kingdom is facing real economic challenges. Measures taken for long years were only partial solutions, but not drastic steps to deal with the problem, he pointed out. The kingdom has reinforced security personnel along the northern and northeastern borders with Syria. Head of the Jordanian Border Guard, Brigadier General Sami Kafawin, said some armed groups are expected to cross the Jordanian frontier as heavy strikes continued against Daesh in Syria and Iraq. Kafawin said the Jordanian army is ready to deal with any threats from the terror group that may result from freeing the Syrian city of Al-Raqqa.
We reinforce our borders, especially in the northern part and the eastern part of the Syrian borders. We reinforce by manpower, equipment, the whole weapon system we need to make the balance between the security and the fight, the real fight, if it's happened. In the past, we used to deal with the threat as a security issue. Now we are talking about both. We might do some security clearance at the borders for the at least 20K of our borders, and we might do some engagement, with a real engagement with some of our troops deployed over there at the borders.
Minister of Foreign and Expatriates Affairs Ayman Safadi met European Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini in Davos. They discussed preparations to hold the Union for the Mediterranean Forum, which will be held in Barcelona on Monday. Jordan and the EU will co-chair the forum, which will be attended by ministers and representatives from 43 countries. The National Electric Power Company, NEPCO, signed 2 agreements to implement 2 of the 3 phases of the Green Corridor project. The project aims to increase the national grid's capacity to absorb the load generated by new renewable energy. A tender in the first agreement is allocated for building a 400 kilovolt transfer station in Ma'an Governorate at a cost of 19 million JDs and was referred to the Saudi National Contracting Company. The other tender was assigned to supply and install transformers for the station in the southern governorate at a cost of 3.4 million JDs and was referred to the Global General Electric Company. NEPCO Director General Abdel Fattah Daratke said implementation will begin within 2 weeks and that the whole project will be operational by 2018.
The NEPCO National Electric Power Company has signed 2 contracts. The first one regarding the construction of the 400 kilovolt line substation in Ma'an, in which it will be connected to the old substation and also to the existing power line between Aqaba and Amman. And the aim of the substation is to transmit the power generated from the renewable energy from the south areas to the load centers in Amman area. The cost of this project is around $27 million. The other project is the regarding the importing of 2 transformers with a capacity of 400 megavolt ampere for each, with cost of around 4.4 million euro.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in Davos the world body will fully participate in Syria peace talks in Kazakhstan. The talks will be convened by Russia, Turkey and Iran in the Kazakh capital Astana in a bid to preserve the Syrian ceasefire. Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister Mehmet Şimşek, also attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, was optimistic the talks would lead to a longer-lasting settlement.
We strongly encourage the possibility of Syria talks to preserve a ceasefire, to create conditions for a political dialogue to be established in the near future. And the UN will, of course, fully participate and will fully support any effort to bring the parties together.
There is real hope about Astana summit because obviously Russia is a key player. Turkey is an important player, actor, and Iran is an important, and United States. So all these countries are likely to meet in Astana and try to find a lasting settlement, or at least a period, some sort of solution that would lead to more lasting settlement.
Despite the nationwide cessation of hostilities, food and water supplies are in critical levels in Damascus and Deir ez-Zor. Daesh has launched an offensive against the desert eastern town of Deir ez-Zor, capturing the drop zone where the World Food Programme used to deliver food by helicopters. About 93,000 civilians had been totally cut off since Sunday. Furthermore, aid convoys are still being blocked both by the Syrian government and opposition groups. Speaking in Geneva, UN Special Envoy for Syria's Humanitarian Affairs Advisor Jan Egeland said December and January have been the worst months for the aid delivery. Egeland also said the towns of Madaya and Zabadani, Al-Fu'a and Kafraya were now a disaster area where people were dying because of lack of medical attention.
There is food for a few weeks. We heard today, maybe it was for half of the population for up to a month. That was how they counted a World Food Programme. So it's absolutely critical, the situation. Even worse today is that the one hospital that was really treating wounded had to be also moved because it came into direct fire. Thousands of families have been displaced from Wadi Barada. There are fierce fighting, many civilians killed, and it also holds the water supply to Damascus. So now for nearly a month, 27 days today, 5.5 million people have been without their normal water supply in Damascus.
US B-2 bombers carried out airstrikes against Daesh camps outside the group's former stronghold of Sirte in Libya, killing more than 80 terrorists. U.S. defense officials said the strikes were carried out late yesterday with more than 100 precision-guided munitions dropped. A Pentagon spokesman said an initial assessment indicated the U.S. military strikes destroyed 2 camps southwest of Sirte. Libyan forces, backed by U.S. airstrikes, finished clearing the last Daesh holdout in Sirte early December after a battle of nearly 7 months. The United States carried out about 470 airstrikes against the terrorist group in Sirte during that campaign.
First, in Libya, our Africa Command conducted airstrikes against 2 ISIL camps south of Sirte. Initial estimates indicate that the airstrikes killed more than 80 ISIL fighters, many of whom had converged there after fleeing from local partner forces who had cleared Sirte last month with our help. Importantly, these strikes were directed against some of ISIL's external plotters, who were actively planning operations against our allies in Europe.
At least 25 fighters were killed in Tehran when a 17-story commercial building collapsed while they were trying to put out a blaze. Iranian state television said at least 78 people, including 45 firefighters, had been hurt when the Plasco building came crashing down. Soldiers, sniper dogs and rescue workers continued to search for trapped firefighters. President Hassan Rouhani ordered an immediate investigation, though initial reports said an electrical short circuit caused the fire. The Plasco building is Iran's first private high-rise built more than 50 years ago. A huge avalanche swallowed up a luxury mountain hotel in central Italy after a series of strong earthquakes rocked the area. Up to 30 people were buried under tons of snow and debris. The Italian Prime Minister said Italians were holding their breath as rescuers searched for signs of life at the hotel. Italian media said 3 bodies had been retrieved from the site, but more than 20 hours later, only a couple of survivors had been found, 2 men who had been outside when the disaster struck. The gabbled peaks of parts of the roof and a row of windows were the only sections of the 4-story hotel still visible. Washington will turn into a virtual fortress ahead of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration tomorrow. More than 250,000 protesters are expected to descend on the Capitol during the swearing-in. Police have forecast some 900,000 people. Both supporters and opponents will flood Washington for the inauguration ceremony. This includes the swearing-in on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and a parade to the White House along streets thronged with spectators. Meantime, Trump, the Republican president-elect, has asked 50 government employees with important senior jobs to stay on in his administration. Trump's spokesman, Sean Spicer, said keeping on critical staff from the Obama administration is key to maintaining the continuity of government and ensuring the country is prepared to handle any potential incidents. Spicer said the 50 federal workers will remain on a case-by-case basis until the Trump administration finds successors. And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Paris Wax Museum. Dressed in a dark blue suit and a red tie, the wax version at the Gravin Museum stood between the statues of Putin and Merkel. The statue was made in record time, actually in 2 months rather than the usual 6, because the museum had anticipated a victory by Hillary Clinton. The sculpture admits, however, that the hair, which is real, posed a challenge, specifically in getting the color right. A similar Trump wax work was unveiled at Madame Tussauds Museum in London, complete with his signature suntan and yak hair. Trump will be sworn in tomorrow as the 45th President of the United States. Third seed Agnieszka Radwanska was knocked out of the Australian Open second round by unseeded Mirjana Lucic-Baroni. In one of her biggest career victories, the Croat won the match 6-3, 6-2. Lucic-Baroni won the Australian Open doubles title in 1998. Awaiting her now in the third round is either French 28th seed Alizé Cornet or Maria Sakkari of Greece. Radwanska's shock exit was the second by a top 5 seed in the opening rounds, with world number 4 Simona Halep beaten in the first round. And in the men's race, Rafael Nadal dispatched Marcos Baghdatis in straight sets to set up a tantalizing third-round clash against Alexander Zverev of Germany. The 14-time Grand Slam champion muscled his way past Baghdatis in an impressive 6-3, 6-1, 6-3.
He was only allowed to play so well.
Real Madrid lost 2-1 at home to Celta Vigo yesterday, leaving their Copa del Rey hopes hanging by a thread. This was the second blip Real have experienced this season after their defeat to Sevilla in their last league game. Iago Aspas gave the visitors a shock lead in the 64th minute by pouncing on a misjudged clearance by Marcelo and showing composure to fire past a sea of defenders. 5 minutes later, Marcelo made amends with an equalizer, but then 1 minute later, Johnny Castro gave Celta the victory. Celta hosts Real next Wednesday in the second leg of the quarterfinal, with Real needing to win by at least 2 goals. And finally, it will remain cold across the kingdom tonight, with frost formation expected in hilly areas and the Badia. Tomorrow, relatively cold weather prevails in most regions, with northwesterly light winds. Further south, the Gulf of Aqaba can expect a relatively cold night and a warm day, while winds will be northerly moderate and the seas calm. You know the temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The lower house passes the budget bill as the government pledges belt-tightening measures to cut the deficit. The Prime Minister says 2017 is a year of austerity and the kingdom's debt should be kept in safe levels. And up to 30 people are buried under the debris in an avalanche that swallowed up a hotel in central Italy. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.